Richard Thornton pointed at the 10-year-old boy. "Open this safe or your black mother is fired. Right now." The maid stepped forward, voice shaking. "Mr. Thornton, please, he's just a child." "Shut your mouth, Lorraine." Thornton didn't look at her. "I don't take orders from the help, especially not from your kind." 50 billionaires watched, 50 phones recording. Thornton swirled his champagne, grinning. $200 million in that safe. Every locksmith in America failed. But sure, let's see what a little black maid's son can do. Laughter. Cold. Cruel. 5 minutes, boy, if you can count that high. The maid's knees buckled. "Sir, I'm begging you." "Beg quieter. You're embarrassing yourself." The boy said nothing. He walked to the safe, placed his small palm on cold steel, and smiled. But how did we get here? Let's rewind. 30 minutes earlier, before the bet, before the humiliation, before everything changed forever. The service hallway smelled like industrial bleach and leftover champagne. Yancey Foster sat on an overturned storage crate, legs dangling 6 inches from the floor, reading a library book on mechanical engineering. The pages were soft from hundreds of hands before his. Dog-eared corners marked chapters on gear ratios and tumbler mechanisms. Coffee stains decorated Chapter 7. He'd renewed this book 4 times. The librarian had stopped asking questions weeks ago. He was 10 years old, small for his age, invisible by design. Through the cracked service door, he could see the gala in full swing. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across Italian marble floors. Women glided past in gowns that cost more than his mother earned in a year. Men laughed too loud, their watches glinting, timepieces worth more than the apartment building where Yancey slept on a pull-out couch. This was Richard Thornton's world, a world of excess and entitlement. A world where people like Yancey existed only to serve, to clean, to disappear. Yancey had learned to watch without being seen. It was a survival skill. The first rule his mother had taught him: don't draw attention, don't make noise, don't exist louder than necessary. His mother, Lorraine Foster, had worked for Richard Thornton for 12 years, since before Yancey was born. She'd scrubbed his marble floors on her hands and knees, pressed his Egyptian cotton shirts until they were crisp as paper, organized his closets by color, by season, by designer, smiled through every insult because that's what survival looked like when you had a child to feed and rent to pay. Lorraine was 45 years old. Her hands were rough from chemicals and labor. Her back ached from years of bending, lifting, scrubbing. But her eyes still held something fierce, something she hid from employers but showed to her son when they were alone. Tonight, she couldn't find childcare. The regular sitter had canceled. The backup was sick. So Yancey sat in the hallway with his library book, making himself as small and quiet as possible. The penthouse was a monument to ego. Original Picassos hung on walls that could have housed 10 families. A Fabergé egg sat under glass, worth more than Yancey's entire neighborhood. Awards and trophies crowded every surface. Philanthropy prizes from organizations that existed mainly to give awards to men like Thornton. But the centerpiece tonight was different. A safe. Not just any safe. A 1943 Luftwaffe field safe, supposedly recovered from a Nazi officer's bunker in Bavaria, allegedly containing artwork worth $200 million. Thornton had purchased it at auction 6 months ago. He didn't care about the contents. He cared about the story, the mystique, the conversation piece. Professional locksmiths had tried for months to crack it. All failed. Thornton had turned their failure into entertainment. A game, he called it. Crack the safe, keep the contents. $200 million sitting in his living room like a party trick for bored billionaires. Yancey watched the safe through the doorway. His pulse quickened. He recognized it. Not from being here. From research. Months and months of research. YouTube videos explaining lock mechanisms. online forums where enthusiasts traded secrets, a German engineering archive that his teacher, Mrs. Collins, had helped him translate word by painstaking word. He knew this safe's weakness. The 1943 Luftwaffe model had an acoustic vulnerability. The tumblers resonated at specific frequencies when properly aligned. You didn't need to guess the combination. You needed to listen, to feel the vibrations through your fingertips, to hear what the metal was trying to tell you. But knowing wasn't the same as doing. And Yancey had learned, painfully, repeatedly, that boys who looked like him weren't supposed to know things that men like Thornton couldn't figure out. Yancey, his mother's voice, tight with familiar worry. Lorraine appeared in the doorway, uniform crisp, eyes heavy with exhaustion. 45 years of survival carved into the lines of her face. Baby, you need to stay hidden. I mean it. I know, Mama. Don't let anyone see you. Don't talk to anyone. She knelt, straightening his second-hand collar with practiced hands. We need this job. You understand? Yancey wanted to say something, that she deserved better, that no job was worth the way Thornton looked through her like she was furniture, that one day things would be different. But some truths cost too much to speak out loud. I'll be quiet, he said instead. Lorraine kissed his forehead. Her lips were warm. That's my good boy. She disappeared back into the gala, carrying a silver tray of champagne flutes, wearing her smile like armor nobody could see through. Yancey returned to his book, but his eyes kept drifting to the safe. The collision happened fast. A drunk guest, face flushed red, laughing at his own joke, stumbled backward. His elbow caught Yancey's shoulder. His wine glass tipped. Red wine exploded across Yancey's shirt like a wound. What the hell? The guest stared down. Yancey stared up. There's a kid back here? Heads turned. Conversations paused. Silence spread like ripples in a pond. The invisible boy was suddenly horribly visible. Richard Thornton noticed. He crossed the room slowly, deliberately. Each step calculated for maximum intimidation. The crowd parted around him like water around a shark. His eyes swept over Yancey, the wine-stained shirt, the worn shoes with holes near the toes, the library book clutched like a shield against the world. Well, well, Thornton's voice carried across marble floors, designed to be heard. The help brought her puppy tonight. Nervous laughter from the crowd. Lorraine materialized instantly, face drained of color. Mr. Thornton, I'm so sorry. My sitter canceled last minute and I thought— You thought? Thornton raised one eyebrow. I don't pay you to think, Lorraine. I pay you to clean. That's all your kind is good for. More laughter. Louder now. Crueler. I'll take him home right now. I'll call a cab and— You'll stay. Thornton held up a hand, silencing her completely. His eyes hadn't left Yancey. Actually, this might be entertaining. The energy in the room shifted. Guests sensed blood in the water. Thornton smiled. The smile of a man who had never once in his 62 years been told no. And the nightmare began. The boy stood motionless as 50 phones rose to capture whatever came next. None of them were ready. Thornton positioned his phone for the perfect angle. This was going to be delicious. The Maid's son, humiliated in front of Manhattan's elite. Content Gold for his private social media group, the one where billionaires shared videos of the help being put in their place. All right, boy. He checked his Rolex with theatrical flair, making sure everyone saw the diamonds. 5 minutes on the clock. Let's see what the son of a toilet cleaner knows about. Yancey placed his ear against the safe. The cold steel pressed against his cheek. He closed his eyes. $200 million worth of— His small fingers found the dial, started turning, slowly, precisely, each movement deliberate. Priceless Nazi artifacts that the greatest locksmiths in— Yancey wasn't guessing. He was listening. Each tumbler had a voice, a specific frequency when it aligned correctly, like musical notes waiting to form a chord. The safe was speaking to him in a language no one else in this room understood. America couldn't crack, so I highly doubt some little black click. The first tumbler fell into place. Thornton's sentence stumbled. Kid from the click, click. Yancey's fingers moved faster now, more confident, the safe's voice growing clearer with each rotation. The room had gone completely silent. Even the champagne bubbles seemed to pause. "What is he?" someone whispered. Click. Thornton lowered his phone slightly. Something cold crept into his expression, something that looked almost like fear. "There's no way. There's absolutely no—" Clunk. The massive steel door swung open. 28 seconds. The boy had opened a safe that defeated every professional locksmith in America. Before Richard Thornton finished his sentence. Silence. 1 heartbeat. 2. Then chaos erupted. A woman screamed. Champagne glasses shattered on marble. Guests surged forward, phones blazing with light. Yancey stepped back from the safe, expression unchanged, like he'd just opened his school locker, like this was any ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Lorraine's knees gave out completely. A waiter caught her arm before she collapsed. Inside the safe, not artwork. Stacks of documents, leather-bound ledgers, manila folders stuffed with photographs, bank statements, wire transfer records, paper, mountains and mountains of paper. Thornton's face cycled through emotions like a broken slot machine. Shock, confusion, rage. Then something darker. Fear. "Nobody touch those!" He lunged toward the safe. "Those are private. That's my property. Nobody touch anything!" But 50 phones had already captured everything. 100 photographs already taken. The evidence was already out. Yancey looked at Thornton. Calm, quiet, unafraid. "You said $1 million. Thornton froze mid-lunge. "For my mom. You said it." The boy's voice carried clearly. "Everyone heard you. Everyone recorded it." Chub. A single photograph slid across the floor and stopped at Lorraine's feet. She picked it up with trembling hands. Her own name stared back at her, next to a number that should have been her retirement, next to the word transferred. How does a 10-year-old boy crack a $200 million safe in 28 seconds? The answer begins 6 years earlier, in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Queens. Decked, age 4. Lorraine's alarm clock stopped working on a cold Wednesday in February. She stared at it in the pre-dawn darkness, panic rising in her chest. She couldn't afford a new one. She couldn't afford to be late. Thornton had already warned her twice about punctuality. One more strike and she was gone. So she planned to wake herself every hour, checking the stove clock, terrified of oversleeping and losing everything. Yancey found the broken clock in the trash the next morning. He sat on the kitchen floor for 3 hours, tiny fingers working with tools he'd fashioned from a butter knife and a bent paperclip. His tongue stuck out in concentration, a habit he'd never grow out of. At noon, he walked into the kitchen where Lorraine was preparing for her shift. "Fixed it, Mama." He held up the clock. It was ticking. Perfectly. Lorraine stared at her 4-year-old son, at the grease smudges on his small fingers, at the clock that had defeated her but surrendered to him. "Baby, how did you—" Yancey shrugged, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "It wanted to work, Mama. It just forgot how. I reminded it." That night, after Yancey fell asleep, Lorraine cried into her pillow. Not from sadness. From the terrifying realization that her son was something extraordinary, something she had no idea how to protect in a world that destroyed extraordinary black boys every single day. Age 6. Yancey found a rusted padlock in a dumpster behind their building. Most kids would have kicked it aside. Yancey carried it home like buried treasure, cradling it against his chest. He spent 2 days watching YouTube videos on his mother's ancient phone, the one with the cracked screen she couldn't afford to replace. Lock mechanisms, tumbler systems, the elegant physics of security. On the 3rd day, he opened the padlock with a bent paperclip and a bobby pin. Then he did it again, and again, blindfolded, behind his back, until the lock became an extension of his own hands. Word spread through the building. Mrs. Patterson from 4B locked herself out at midnight. Yancey opened her door in 30 seconds, still half asleep in his pajamas. Mr. Williams lost the key to his storage unit. Yancey cracked it during a commercial break of the game show they were watching, Old Mrs. Henderson's late husband had left a lockbox she'd never been able to open. Yancey had it open before her tea finished steeping. "That boy got magic hands," Mr. Williams told Lorraine, shaking his head in amazement. "You got yourself a little wizard there." Lorraine smiled tightly, but inside, worry gnawed at her. Magic drew attention. And attention was dangerous for boys who looked like Yancey in a world that saw threat in their potential. Age 8. Yancey discovered online forums, lock sport communities where enthusiasts traded techniques like recipes, security researchers who analyzed vulnerabilities, historians who documented the evolution of locks from ancient Egypt to modern bank vaults. He read everything: forum threads, technical manuals, historical archives. He learned about warded locks and pin tumblers and disk detainers and combination mechanisms that had protected secrets since Caesar's Rome. His vocabulary expanded in ways his teachers couldn't explain. Suddenly he was using words like false gate and binding order and acoustic resonance. His teacher noticed. Mrs. Collins was 50 years old, a former mechanical engineer who'd spent 20 years in corporate America before burning out completely. She'd found a second purpose in teaching, in recognizing sparks others missed. She recognized Yancey's spark the first week of 3rd grade. "Yancey, what are you reading during lunch?" "German engineering archives, ma'am. About World War II safes." She looked at the 8-year-old boy reading documents that had challenged her in graduate school, reading them for fun, reading them like novels. "Would you like help translating the technical sections?" That question changed everything. Mrs. Collins became his secret mentor. She gave him engineering textbooks from her own collection, journals from university libraries, access to research databases through her old credentials that hadn't been deactivated. She called him "my little locksmith" and meant it as the highest honor she could bestow. "You have a gift, Yancey," she told him once after he'd solved a puzzle that stumped her for an hour. "A rare and beautiful gift. Don't let anyone tell you it's not yours to use." Age 9. Yancey saw the news coverage on a borrowed tablet at the public library. Richard Thornton, Manhattan billionaire, had purchased a legendary Nazi safe at auction. $200 million in supposed contents, reporters breathlessly announced. Every locksmith in America had tried to crack it. All had failed. The camera zoomed in on the safe, a 1943 Luftwaffe field model. Yancey's heart stopped. He knew this safe. He'd studied this exact mechanism for months. The acoustic vulnerability in the tumbler system, the specific resonance frequency, the listening technique required to exploit it. He ran home so fast he forgot his library card. "Mama," he said that night, breathless with excitement, "I could open that safe. The one on TV. Mr. Thornton's safe. I know how." Lorraine looked up from the bills she was sorting, deciding which ones could wait another month and which ones couldn't. "Baby, that's Mr. Thornton's safe. The man I work for. The man who pays our rent." "I know, but, well, don't go getting any ideas." She ruffled his hair, trying to gentle the rejection. "Focus on school. That safe isn't our business." Yancey nodded, obeyed, said nothing more. But he kept researching, building his knowledge, refining his technique, waiting for a moment that might never come. Bad. Age 10. 3 months before the gala. Mrs. Collins helped him find the original blueprints. A German engineering archive, digitized by a university in Munich and buried in academic databases. Complete schematics for the 1943 Luftwaffe field safe, including manufacturing specifications and design vulnerabilities. Yancey studied them like sacred texts. He practiced on similar mechanisms. Old safes from pawn shops purchased with birthday money. Vintage locks from estate sales where no one noticed a small black boy browsing the tables. Anything with tumblers and acoustic properties. 32 seconds became 28, then 25, then 21. He didn't know when he'd get the chance to try the real thing. But if the moment ever came, he'd be ready. Present. The penthouse. Chaos. Documents scattered across Thornton's marble floor like autumn leaves in a hurricane. Security guards scrambled to gather them. Guests kept photographing everything. It was like trying to catch water with bare hands. The more they grabbed, the more slipped through. Yancey stood motionless, watching the chaos he'd unleashed. He hadn't known what was in the safe. He'd just wanted to win the bet, save his mother's job, prove for once in his invisible life that being overlooked didn't mean being worthless. But now, oh my God. A woman in diamonds held a document, face white as bleached bone. "Richard, this is my pension fund." Her voice cracked with horror. "These are transactions from my pension fund. Money that was supposed to be safe." Thornton moved toward her, hands raised. "Eleanor, that's clearly a forgery." "This is my signature." She thrust the page toward him. "I never authorized this transfer. I never—" "Richard." A man in a three-piece suit stepped forward, holding another document with shaking hands. "This is the foundation account. The Children's Hospital Foundation we started together. There's nothing left. It's all gone." More voices now, rising like a wave. "My retirement fund. The charity auction proceeds. He told me this was safely invested. 20 years of savings." Yancey looked at the documents carpeting the floor. He didn't understand all the numbers and legal language, but he understood enough. Names, accounts, transfers, years, decades of theft hidden in a safe that was never supposed to be opened. Lorraine was on her knees, not from collapse this time. She'd lowered herself deliberately to pick up a single page that had landed near her feet. Her name. Her employee account. 12 years of automatic deductions. Gone. Every penny of her retirement savings. Gone. "Mom?" Yancey knelt beside her. Lorraine looked at her son with something he'd never seen before. Not fear, not sadness. Rage. Cold, pure, righteous rage. 12 years, she whispered. 12 years I worked for this man, and he stole everything. The chaos deepened around them. Thornton's security tried to confiscate phones. Guests refused, threatening lawsuits. Lawyers were being called. Police were being called. News networks were being called. Everyone was calling everyone. In the middle of the maelstrom, a woman approached Yancey. She was 40, sharp-eyed, dressed expensively enough to blend in, but not so expensively that she belonged. Her phone was already recording. "Kid?" She crouched to his level. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Yancey looked at her steadily. "I opened a safe." "No." The woman's smile was grim, knowing. "You opened Pandora's box, and there's no closing it now." She extended her hand. "Diana Shaw, investigative journalist. I've been trying to nail Richard Thornton for 5 years." She glanced at the chaos around them. Never could find proof. Until tonight. Diana was already uploading footage to secure servers. already composing tweets, already tagging every news organization in her contacts. The story wasn't just out, it was everywhere. Thornton found them. His face had transformed. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by something cornered and feral and dangerous. "You!" He jabbed a finger at Lorraine. "Control your son! Now!" Lorraine rose slowly, still holding the document with her stolen retirement. "Control him?" Her voice was ice. "You stole my money. You stole from everyone in this room." "That's a lie. Those documents are forgeries. I'm holding the proof, Mr. Thornton." She held up the page. "My name, my money, your signature." Thornton stepped closer, towering over her. "Listen carefully, Lorraine. You're nobody. You clean toilets. You think anyone's going to believe the word of a... Don't." Yancey stepped between them, small, 10 years old, barely reaching Thornton's chest. But something in his eyes, something hard and unafraid, made the billionaire pause. "You made a bet," Yancey said quietly. $1 million, 50 witnesses, 50 cameras. That was a joke. "You weren't laughing when the safe opened." Thornton's face reddened with fury. "You little... Pay my mom, like you promised." The room had stopped to watch, recording, waiting, holding their breath. Thornton had no move. He'd made the bet publicly, on camera. Breaking it now meant admitting defeat, admitting that a 10-year-old black kid from Queens had beaten him in front of everyone who mattered. His jaw worked silently. Then he smiled, that cold, reptilian smile. "You want to play games, little boy?" He straightened his jacket with deliberate calm. "Let me show you how adults play." Ticked. He turned to his lawyer, whispering instructions. The real counterattack was about to begin. Pemberton was Thornton's personal attorney. 60 years old, $3,000 suit, $200 haircut, eyes like a snake that had attended Harvard Law and learned to smile without meaning it. He stepped forward, raising both hands in a calming gesture that fooled no one. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's all take a breath." The chaos subsided slightly. People recognized that voice, that practiced tone of authority, the voice of someone who made inconvenient problems disappear for a living. "What we've witnessed tonight is unusual." Pemberton allowed a thin, patronizing smile. "A child with a parlor trick. Impressive, certainly. But let's be absolutely clear about several important facts." He held up one manicured finger. "First, Mr. Thornton's bet was obviously a joke. Party entertainment for his guests. Not a legally binding contract. Any first-year law student could tell you that." Uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the crowd. The energy shifted. "Second," another finger rose. "This child, however he accomplished his little trick, has accessed the private contents of Mr. Thornton's personal property without authorization. Technically speaking, that constitutes trespassing, perhaps even burglary." Lorraine stiffened. Yancey's eyes narrowed, but his expression remained calm. "Third," Pemberton's smile sharpened into something predatory. "Any documents removed from this residence tonight, photographed or otherwise distributed, will be considered stolen property. Mr. Thornton's legal team will pursue maximum damages, and I do mean maximum, against every single person involved." Phones lowered around the room. Fear rippled visibly through the crowd. Thornton stepped forward, confidence restored, feeding off the shifting momentum. "And now, to the matter of your continued employment, Lorraine." He pulled out his own phone, made a theatrical show of scrolling through it. "Interesting thing about your work visa. Seems there's a technicality. A paperwork error from 8 years ago that was never properly resolved." He looked up, eyes cold as Arctic ice. One phone call to immigration, and you're on a plane back to wherever you came from. Your son gets processed into the foster care system. Lorraine's face went gray. Separated, of course, Thornton added with mock sympathy. They always separate families. Tragic, really. The silence in the room was suffocating. So here's my real offer. Thornton clasped his hands together like a generous benefactor. The boy apologizes, publicly, right now. Admits he somehow staged this entire spectacle, planted those documents to frame an innocent man. He gestured expansively at the crowd. Everyone deletes their footage. We all forget this unfortunate little evening ever happened. Pause. Dramatic. Calculated. And in exchange, I'll graciously let your mother keep her visa, her dignity, her pathetic little life in my service. Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Yancey looked at his mother, at the terror flooding her eyes. 12 years of careful invisibility, of bowing and scraping and swallowing her pride, all shattered in one night by his hands. Lorraine knelt, gripping his shoulders with trembling fingers. Just apologize, baby. Her voice cracked like thin ice. Please, it's not worth it. We'll figure something out. We always figure something out. Mama? Please. Tears carved rivers down her cheeks. I can't lose you. I can't. You're all I have. Yancey looked past her. At Ruth, the cook, standing in the kitchen doorway, 60 years old, watching silently. At Samuel, the driver, jaw tight with suppressed fury. At Martha, the housekeeper, hands clasped together like she was praying. At 6 other workers behind them, brown faces, tired eyes, all whose names were somewhere in those documents, all who had been robbed exactly like his mother. Their faces were resigned, defeated. The faces of people who had learned through bitter experience that fighting back was never worth the cost. Yancey looked back at Thornton, at the smirk spreading across his face like an oil slick, at the absolute certainty of victory gleaming in his eyes. No. Lorraine's grip tightened painfully. Yancey? No, Mom. His voice was steady as bedrock. He stole from you. From Ruth. From Samuel. From Martha. From everyone who ever trusted him. Baby, please. And he wants me to apologize? The room went absolutely still. Yancey turned to face Thornton directly. Small body, huge courage. You're scared. Thornton's smirk flickered. That's why you're threatening a kid and his mom instead of calling the police yourself. Watch your mouth, boy. If those documents were fake, you'd want an investigation. But you don't, because you know exactly what's in them. I said watch your... You're a bully! Yancey's voice rose, carrying across the marble penthouse. I've dealt with bullies my whole life. They're only scary until someone decides to stand up. Movement from the kitchen doorway. Ruth stepped out first. Slow, deliberate. Then Samuel, then Martha, then 6 more workers. People who had served in this penthouse for years. People who had bowed and scraped and swallowed their pride because they believed they had no other choice. They formed a line behind Yancey, a wall of the invisible finally choosing to be seen. Ruth spoke first, voice shaking but unbroken. 12 years. She looked directly at Thornton. 12 years you stole from me too. 12 years I kept quiet. She straightened her spine. I'm done. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Someone had called the authorities, and for the first time in his life, Richard Thornton had no idea what to do. The next few minutes compressed chaos into crystal clarity. Diana's footage went live before the elevator doors opened. The hashtag #ThorntonExposed appeared on Twitter at 9:47 p.m. By 9:52, it was trending in New York City. By 9:58, it was trending in all 50 states. By 10:04, it was trending globally. News vans materialized on the street below like vultures sensing carrion. Thornton's PR team arrived in a panic. Then his secondary lawyers. Then his crisis management consultants, specialists who charged $5,000 an hour to make problems disappear. None of them could make this problem disappear. Because this problem was already everywhere. On every phone, on every feed, on every screen. Spreading faster than any team could possibly contain. But the real climax wasn't happening in the digital world. It was happening in a quiet service corridor. Lorraine pulled Yancey away from the chaos, through a door marked Staff Only, into a hallway that smelled like cleaning supplies and broken dreams. Her hands shook violently as she gripped his shoulders. "What did you do?" Not accusation. Pure awe. "Baby, what did you do?" "I opened a safe, Mama." "Yancey!" "He was going to fire you." His voice cracked, the first break in his composure all night. "He called you worthless. He said toilet cleaner. He said you're kind." Lorraine's breath caught in her throat. "I couldn't just stand there, Mama." Tears finally spilled down Yancey's cheeks. "I couldn't watch him hurt you and do nothing. I couldn't." She pulled him into her arms, held him so tight she could feel his heart hammering against her chest. 12 years, she whispered into his hair. 12 years I bowed my head in this house, apologized for breathing, told myself it was survival, told myself it was for you, to give you a better life. She pulled back, looked at her son, really looked at him. "When did you get so brave?" Yancey wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "You taught me, Mom. I never taught you to do this. You taught me that doing right is hard." His voice steadied. "But it's always right. You said it every single day, when you thought I wasn't listening." Lorraine laughed through her tears. A wet, broken, beautiful sound. "I said that?" "Every day, Mama. Every single day." She hugged him again, tighter than before. Then something shifted, in her spine, in her shoulders, in the very core of who she was. She straightened, stood tall. "Come on, baby." She took his hand firmly. "We're not done yet." They walked back into the main room together. Mother and son, hand in hand. Lorraine didn't look at the chaos, didn't look at the cameras or the lawyers or the panicking PR team. She looked at Richard Thornton, and she began to speak. "My name is Lorraine Foster." Her voice carried, clear and strong. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. "I have cleaned this man's toilets for 12 years. Diana's camera swung toward her. Other phones followed like flowers turning toward the sun. "I have smiled when he insulted me, apologized when he humiliated me in front of guests, said, 'Yes, sir,' and 'Thank you, sir,' when he treated me like I was less than human." She stepped forward. Thornton actually stepped back. "I did it because I thought I had no choice. Because I thought being invisible was the only way to survive in a world that wasn't made for people like me. Because I thought I was protecting my son by teaching him to stay quiet, stay small, stay out of the way." She turned to look at Yancey, tears falling freely, unashamed. "But my son just showed me something I'd forgotten." The room was silent. Completely, utterly silent. "He's 10 years old." Her voice broke and reformed, stronger. 10. And he's braver than I've been in 45 years of living. She faced Thornton again, eye to eye with the man who had owned her labor for 12 years. "You can threaten my visa, Richard." First time she'd ever used his first name. "You can try to destroy my life. You can call me the help. Call me your kind. Call me whatever makes you feel powerful. She stepped closer. He stepped back. But you cannot. You will never make me apologize for raising a son who knows the difference between right and wrong. Her voice rose to fill every corner of the penthouse. That is something your money will never, ever buy. Silence. One heartbeat. 2, 3. Then someone in the back of the room started clapping. A single person. Then another joined, then another. Then the entire room erupted in thunderous applause. Guests who had laughed at Yancey were now wiping tears. Workers who had spent years hiding in kitchens were now standing in the open, clapping, crying, finally seen. The invisible had become visible, and the world was watching. Thornton stood alone in the middle of his own penthouse. His lawyer had vanished. His security team wouldn't meet his eyes. His PR consultants were already composing their resignation emails. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. 4 FBI agents stepped out. Dark suits, serious faces, federal badges catching the chandelier light. They had been building a case against Richard Thornton for 7 years. Missing evidence, blocked subpoenas, witnesses who disappeared or suddenly recanted. Tonight, the evidence had delivered itself. The lead agent walked directly to Thornton. Richard Thornton? Thornton's face had gone pale as bone. This is private property. You have no right to... Richard Thornton, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and racketeering. Handcuffs clicked around wrists that had never known restraint. Do you know who I am? Thornton screamed as they led him toward the elevator. Do you have any idea who I am? Yes, sir, the agent replied flatly. You're under arrest. As the elevator doors began to close, Thornton twisted to look at Yancey one final time. This isn't over, boy. Yancey met his gaze steadily. For you it is. The doors closed. The penthouse exploded in cheers. And Lorraine Foster held her son and wept with joy. 24 hours later, the world was still burning. Thornton Exposed had evolved into #Thornton. Arrested, then #Thornton Files, then #Justice for the Invisible. Each hashtag bigger than the last. Each one carrying the story further. Every news outlet on the planet ran some version of the headline. 10-year-old cracks impossible safe, exposes Billionaire's $340 million fraud. The boy who brought down a giant. Maid son versus Manhattan Billionaire, a modern David and Goliath. 28 seconds that changed everything. The numbers were staggering in their scope. 850 victims, pension funds drained, savings accounts emptied, charity donations diverted, trust accounts pillaged. 15 years of systematic theft hidden in a safe that was never supposed to be opened, until a 10-year-old boy pressed his ear to the steel and listened. The class action lawsuit was filed within 48 hours. 47 pages of charges, 850 plaintiffs, $340 million in documented theft. Thornton's assets were frozen by federal order, his bank accounts seized, his properties padlocked, his art collection inventoried for eventual auction. Victims would be compensated from the wreckage of his empire. Every last penny accounted for. Ruth received the call on a Wednesday afternoon. She was sitting in Lorraine's tiny kitchen, drinking coffee from a chipped mug, when her phone rang. Mrs. Washington? This is the Federal Victims Compensation Fund. I'm calling to inform you that your pension will be fully restored, plus interest, plus damages. Ruth hung up the phone, sat very still for a long moment, then put her head down on the kitchen table and wept. Lorraine held her hand through all of it, said nothing, just held on. Some moments don't need words. Yancey became famous entirely against his will. Every news outlet in the country wanted an interview. Book deals arrived daily, six-figure advances for a story he didn't want to tell. Movie producers called with offers that made Lorraine's head spin. A reality TV network pitched a show called Little Locksmith that made Yancey physically cringe. He turned everything down. Through Mrs. Collins, he released a single written statement. "I'm just a kid who likes puzzles. I didn't do this to be famous. I did it because Mr. Thornton bet my mom's job, and that wasn't fair. My mom always taught me to stand up when something isn't fair. That's it. That's the whole story. Can I please just go back to school now?" The internet fell completely in love. Hashtag Yancey Foster trended for 6 days straight. Fan art appeared, tribute videos, a song by an indie artist that got 10 million streams. Yancey just wanted to finish his library book. Thornton's fall was absolute and total. Denied bail, the judge cited extreme flight risk and extensive overseas assets. Board of directors removed him unanimously from his own company. Liability too severe. Wife of 12 years filed for divorce within the week. Self-preservation. 3 business partners resigned quietly. 2 more were placed under investigation. One turned state's witness in exchange for immunity, providing testimony that guaranteed Thornton would die in prison. The safe that was supposed to showcase his power had become the instrument of his complete destruction. Lorraine's story spread even further than her son's. Immigration lawyers flooded her inbox with pro bono offers. Media outlets requested interviews. Companies offered jobs, high-paying positions with excellent benefits, transparently hoping the PR boost would wash away their own sins. She turned every single one down. "I'm done working for people who only see my value when it benefits them," she told one persistent reporter. "I spent 12 years being invisible. Now I want to help others be seen." She announced the creation of a support network for domestic workers, a hotline for reporting wage theft, a legal fund for immigration issues, an advocacy organization for the invisible workforce that kept America running, funded by a portion of the class action settlement she was owed. 1 week after the gala, a letter arrived at their apartment. No return address. Inside, a check for $1 million. Signed by Richard Thornton. Dated the night of the gala. Time-stamped before his arrest. He had written it after all. He just never planned to actually give it. Lorraine stared at the check for a very long time. Then she endorsed it over to the Victims' Compensation Fund. Every single penny. "You could have kept it," Yancey said. "He owed you that money." Lorraine smiled softly. "He did, but I don't need his money to know what I'm worth." She kissed her son's forehead. "You taught me that." 3 months later, life had transformed completely, and somehow, in the ways that mattered most, stayed exactly the same. Lorraine. The apartment in Brooklyn wasn't large by any standard. 2 small bedrooms, a kitchen that real estate agents would charitably call efficient, a bathroom where you could touch both walls simultaneously, a balcony barely wide enough for 2 folding chairs. But it was theirs, purchased outright with settlement money. No mortgage, no landlord, no one who could ever tell them to leave. Lorraine stood in the empty living room the day they got the keys, running her palm along the freshly painted wall like she couldn't quite believe it was solid. "Mama?" Yancey appeared in the doorway, carrying a box of books. "You okay?" "I'm good, baby." She wiped her eyes quickly. "Just processing." "Processing what?" "The fact that no one can ever kick us out of here." She laughed, still surprised by the truth of it. "This is ours. Really, actually ours." The Domestic Workers Support Network launched 2 weeks after they moved in. Small office in a converted storefront. 3 volunteers, Ruth, Samuel, and a young lawyer named Patricia who worked pro bono. A phone line that rang constantly from the moment they opened. They helped 40 workers report wage theft in the first month, 63 the second month, 81 the third. By month 4, they'd expanded to 2 offices, 8 volunteers, a full-time staff attorney funded by donations that kept arriving unsolicited. It wasn't glamorous. The work was exhausting and often heartbreaking. But it was good. Genuinely, tangibly good. Lorraine still cleaned houses, but only for clients she chose personally. People who paid fairly. People who said please and thank you. People who learned her name on the first day and never forgot it. On her own terms. Finally. Yancey. School was complicated in ways Yancey hadn't anticipated. Mrs. Collins had implemented a strict no Thornton questions policy in her classroom. Violators received extra homework. Repeat violators received extra homework and a phone call home. The policy proved remarkably effective, but the other kids still knew. Some treated Yancey with obvious awe, asking him to sign their notebooks, following him at lunch. Some treated him with jealousy, muttering that he thought he was special now, too good for regular kids. Some treated him with suspicion, watching him like he might crack open their lockers and expose their secrets too. Yancey didn't want any of it. He just wanted to be normal, to be invisible again. But by choice this time. He started a club. Mechanical puzzles for beginners. Tuesdays and Thursdays after school. Room 104. 5 kids showed up the first week. 3 out of genuine interest, 2 hoping for fame adjacency. 8 kids the second week, then 12, then 15. They took apart old clocks and learned how gears transferred motion. They picked locks from the hardware store and discussed the physics of security. They built simple mechanisms from scrap parts and discovered that complicated things were really just simple things working together. Mrs. Collins supervised, but never interfered. Teaching someone else, she told Yancey after one session, is the best way to discover what you actually understand. Yancey's YouTube channel had exploded in ways he hadn't intended. Over 200,000 subscribers for anonymous videos about lock mechanisms and mechanical puzzles. He never showed his face on camera, never mentioned his name, never referenced Thornton or the safe. Just pure knowledge, freely shared. The ad revenue went directly to his mother's network. Every single penny. Thornton. The trial proceeded with agonizing thoroughness. Evidence overwhelming. Witnesses devastating. Defense strategies crumbling one after another. In pre-trial hearings, Thornton tried everything. The documents were planted by enemies. His accountants had deceived him. His employees had conspired against him. His ex-wife had masterminded the entire fraud. Nothing stuck. The documents were in his own handwriting. The wire transfers bore his personal authorization codes. The victims remembered every promise he'd made, and every one he'd broken. His penthouse sold at federal auction for $47 million. The buyer, a nonprofit coalition for immigrant family housing. They announced plans to convert it into affordable apartments, specifically for domestic workers and their families. The marble floors where Lorraine had knelt for 12 years would become foundations for families just like hers. The irony was perfect and absolutely intentional. The workers. Ruth retired 3 weeks after the settlement checks arrived. Full pension restored, plus back interest, plus damages, plus a formal apology from the federal prosecutor that she framed and hung above her kitchen table. She visited Lorraine every Sunday morning for coffee. They sat on the tiny Brooklyn balcony, watching the city wake up below them, talking about everything and nothing. "Never thought I'd see the day," Ruth said one morning. "What day?" "The day I could stop being scared." She sipped her coffee. "Didn't think that day existed for people like us." Samuel opened a driving school in Queens. Second Chance Motors, specializing in teaching other immigrants to navigate American roads, American laws, American systems. Above his desk hung a framed photograph, Thornton's penthouse, the day it was converted into affordable housing. Samuel had personally driven the first family to their new home. Martha went back to school at 58 years old. Nursing program. Night classes after her day shifts. Homework at kitchen tables until midnight. Her first exam, A+. Turns out, she told Lorraine over the phone, laughing, 40 years of cleaning up after rich people teaches you a lot about anatomy and hygiene. The evening. 3 months after the gala, Lorraine and Yancey sat on their balcony. City lights glittered below like earthbound stars. The real stars were invisible above. Too much light pollution to see. But they could see the moon. That was enough. Lorraine broke the comfortable silence. Yancey, I need to tell you something I should have said weeks ago. He looked up from the puzzle in his hands, a miniature safe mechanism he'd built entirely from scrap metal. All those years at Thornton's house. She stared at her hands, at the calluses that would never fully fade. I told myself I was being strong, surviving, protecting you. You were, Mama. No. She shook her head slowly. I was scared. So scared of losing everything that I forgot I deserved anything. Silence. Comfortable. Safe. You taught me something that night, baby. I just opened a safe. You taught me to stand up straight. She looked at him, eyes glistening. A 10-year-old boy reminded his mother how to stand up straight. I learned it from watching you. Yancey's voice was quiet. Every day for 10 years. You just forgot you were teaching me. Lorraine pulled him into a hug that said everything words couldn't. Later that night, Yancey gave her a small box. Inside, a handmade charm bracelet, delicate silver chain. Each charm was a tiny lock, crafted from scrap metal, polished until they gleamed like jewels. What's this? Lorraine's voice was thick with emotion. Every lock I ever opened before the safe. All the ones nobody saw. She counted them. 15 tiny locks. Each one taught me something, Mama. And every single time I practiced, I thought about you. About me? How you taught me patience. How you taught me to look closer. How you taught me to never, ever give up. Lorraine put the bracelet on with trembling fingers. It's beautiful. It's you, Sad. Mom? Yes, baby? I think I want to be an engineer someday. Build things, not just open them. Lorraine smiled. The first truly full smile in longer than she could remember. Then that's exactly what you'll do. 1 year later. The verdict. Richard Thornton stood in a federal courtroom as the verdict was read. Guilty. All counts. Wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy to commit fraud, tax evasion, witness tampering, 28 years in federal prison, the exact same number of seconds it had taken a 10-year-old boy to destroy his empire. The cameras captured his face as marshals led him away in handcuffs, hollow, defeated, gray, the face of a man who had finally discovered, too late, that he wasn't untouchable after all. The headline wrote itself across every screen in America, from penthouse to prison, the fall of Richard Thornton. The safe. The Luftwaffe safe was donated to the Smithsonian Institution. It sat in a climate-controlled display case in the American History Wing, accompanied by a new brass plaque. Opened by Yancey Foster, age 10, Washington, D.C., New York City. Some locks are broken by skill, others are broken by courage, the strongest are broken by both. School groups visited every single day. Children pressed their ears against the display glass, pretending they could hear the tumblers through the barrier. Teachers told the story. The Maid's son, the impossible safe. 28 seconds that changed everything. Some stories become legends. This one had the advantage of being true. The workers. Ruth's granddaughter graduated from middle school with highest honors. Her valedictorian speech mentioned, "The boy who taught my grandmother that it's never too late to speak up and never too early to stand tall." Ruth cried in the front row, didn't try to hide it. Samuel's driving school expanded to 3 locations across Queens and Brooklyn, 12 instructors, over 500 graduates who now had licenses, jobs, independence. Above his desk hung that same photograph, Thornton's penthouse on the day it became affordable housing. Samuel had driven 12 families to their new homes personally. He kept count. Martha finished her nursing degree, top 5% of her class, age 59. Her first shift in the hospital, a wealthy patient treated her dismissively, wouldn't look at her, snapped his fingers for attention. Martha set down his chart and looked at him calmly. "Sir, I spent 40 years cleaning up after people like you. I learned patience. I also learned that I don't have to tolerate disrespect anymore." She picked up the chart again. "Now, would you like to start over?" He would. The network. Lorraine's organization, Voices for the Invisible, expanded to 3 cities in its first year. Over 500 workers helped. Wage theft recovered. Visas protected. Dignity restored. She wasn't famous in any conventional sense. No magazine covers, no television interviews, no speaking tours. She was just effective. Relentlessly, quietly effective. That was more than enough. Mrs. Collins. She retired at the end of the school year. At her farewell party, surrounded by 30 years of former students, she told the story of the little locksmith one final time. "I've taught hundreds of children," she said, holding a glass of sparkling cider. "But only a few taught me something." She looked at Yancey in the crowd. The best teaching isn't giving answers. It's showing students they're allowed to ask questions, and then getting out of their way. She didn't cry. She beamed. Yancey, 11 years old now, taller, voice slightly deeper, same quiet intensity in his eyes. He stood at the regional science fair, presenting his project, a security system designed to protect domestic workers, an app that documented work conditions, hours, pay, and treatment. If employers violated agreements, evidence was automatically encrypted and saved to secure cloud storage. Simple, elegant, practical. He didn't win first place. An elaborate volcano with real smoke effects took that prize. But a woman in a business suit approached him afterward. "Mr. Foster?" She handed him a business card. MIT Engineering Outreach Program. "We've been following your YouTube channel for months. Your understanding of mechanical systems is remarkable for any age. When you're ready for college, we'd very much like to have a conversation." Yancey took the card, examined it politely, not impressed by prestige, simply curious about possibilities. "Thank you, but I'm only 11. I've got time." The woman smiled. "I have a feeling you'll use it well." The final night. Lorraine and Yancey. Kitchen table. Homework spread between them. Normal evening. Normal life. Extraordinary peace. Lorraine noticed something on Yancey's wrist. A simple watch. Old, worn, familiar somehow. "Where'd you get that?" "Thrift store. $3. It was broken when I bought it." He held it up, ticking perfectly. "Fixed it." Lorraine laughed. "Of course you did." Comfortable silence. "Mom?" "Yes, baby?" "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't opened that safe?" Lorraine thought for a long moment, really considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember. You didn't open it for money or fame. You opened it because someone threatened your mama." She reached across the table, took his hand. "And that means No matter what was inside that safe, you would have been exactly who you are. Who's that? My son. Her eyes glistened with tears she didn't try to hide. The safe didn't make you special, baby. You were already special. The safe just let everyone else finally see it. Yancey smiled, rare, real, true. Richard Thornton believed power meant owning what others couldn't touch. He spent decades collecting money, secrets, silence, fear. He never understood the truth. The most valuable things aren't locked in safes. They're in the patience of a mother who shows up every single day. In library books read until the pages fall apart. In small hands that learned to listen, then learned to act. $200 million couldn't buy Richard Thornton respect. 28 seconds and one small voice cost him everything. Because some doors aren't opened by those who hold the keys. They're opened by those who were never supposed to try. And sometimes, the smallest hands open the biggest doors. Yancey's hand, small, capable, steady, reaching to turn off the kitchen light. In the last moment before darkness, Lorraine's charm bracelet catches a final ray of light. 15 tiny locks, gleaming.
Chapter.
What would you do if someone threatened everything you loved? Drop your story in the comments below.
One story can wake up a crowd. One moment of clarity can crack years of silence. At Beat Stories, we find those moments, and we share them loud and clear. If this made you think, hit subscribe. This is just the beginning.